listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about product photography. And the important question that I want to be asking you is, why aren't you doing product photography? And if you are doing it, why aren't you doing it more? And I think in this episode, I'm really going to be just sort of touching on a few tips. So basically how to take good photos of your resources, whether they're on TPT or your own website, whatever, how to make them really great, like really great quality photos. But before I dive into the tips on, like what I think is helpful, and I've also got some tips from an actual person that does product photography for sellers. Before I dive into the tips, I do want to say I'm going to be mentioning a little bit of a giveaway at the end of this episode. So definitely make sure you listen to the whole episode. I'm going to be giving all the details at the end. And that's so that you can win the product photography. So you're going to get someone to do some product photography for you for free, which is really cool. Let's start off though, before we get into talking about tips and giveaways and things. Why would you need to be doing product photography? I'm just going to do a little spiel for you because you may be listening thinking, I don't understand why this is even a thing on TPT. Do I actually need to be doing this? Or, you might have like some mindset blocks around like, oh, I don't need to be doing it. Or maybe you're like, I don't want to do it and you need to be talked into it, whatever. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The reality is, like the really harsh truth is that product photography has become somewhat non-negotiable, I would say now in the TPT world. And you can do actual photos or you can use mock-ups, but if you're not really using either of those, like 2018 has called and it wants its fuzzy borders and rectangular covers and clip art back and the chevron and all that, like none of that is okay anymore. You have to be keeping up with trends. You have to be doing what is popular on TPT, what buyers are expecting, and what's like the norm. You have to keep up with what's basically in fashion, essentially. And product photography is in, and it's for a reason, okay? It's not because it's like some kind of quirky trend and who knows why chevron was a thing, but it was. But like product photography is really powerful in the business world outside of TPT. So TPT is just like this, business that has essentially adopted it. As sellers, we've started doing it, but this is something that you see everywhere. Go onto eBay, Amazon, like go clothes shopping at any website that you like buying clothes from, like whether you're buying toys for your kid or kitchen appliances or whatever. When we shop online for anything, we see photos of what we're buying. Can you imagine going onto Amazon and you said you're going to buy something on there, like, you want to buy something for product photography, for example, you want to go and buy like a phone holder or something, and there's no photo of what it looks like. Can you imagine? Would you ever buy it? That's crazy. Imagine it was all just descriptions and words, or people were putting pictures up with words and like typing stuff, and just like there was no photos of what it looked like. Or there was like these little clip art images of it, and you'd be like, I'm sorry, what? You go to like your favorite website and you want to buy like a new dress, you go and clothes shopping online. And instead of a picture of a model in the dress, there is a clip art child wearing a dress. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? Or like some kind of black and white outline of it. Or someone's written, this listing is a green dress. And like, you would be like, what? You would not buy it. And I'm sorry, that's true. And like, this is something I say to coaching students all the time on my audits. I'm like, imagine you were shopping online, put your buyer hat on for a second. Imagine going anywhere and not seeing photos of what you're getting, like mind blown. You would just be clicking away so quickly. And that's really obvious for us to understand when we're outside of the TPT space. We're like, duh, of course I want to see a picture of what I'm getting. I need to know what I'm buying because it's online and I can't physically pick it up and touch it and see it. So I need to see a photo. And that's so obvious to us, outside of TPT. But then for some weird reason, when we transition to doing our own business on TPT, we suddenly just, all of that logic flies out the window and we're suddenly like, it makes sense to not use a photo. Really? That's crazy. So I am here to call you out if you're one of those people that has not been using product photography or has some kind of doubts about it. You need to be doing it. It's gotten to the point where it's like all of the really established, big, successful, money-making sellers are using it. And you are, potentially missing out on a lot of income if you aren't doing this. And that's the reality. And this is what this podcast is. I'm here to give you that real talk sometimes, I think that we need to hear. You need to have someone say to you, like kind of grab you and shake you and say, come on now, you need to be doing this. Okay, well, that is the end of my little spiel. We know that product photography is a game changer. It's important in the online space when you're buying things. It's actually, there's a lot of like research that goes into it. If you want to Google it because you don't believe me, a lot of research has been done to say that people remember the things they see, not what they read, that photos convert more. Like just Google it, you'll see all these like percentages, like this many % of people buy things when they see a photo and the brain remembers images better, blah, blah, blah. There's a load of like stats on it. I won't bore you with it. You can Google it if you want to, but the research is there to prove that photos really make a difference. And so on TPT, that is no different. A teacher wants to imagine the resource in their classroom. So they want to see like, that worksheet would look like if it was cut out and colored in and filled in by a student and put on a desk with supplies, because that makes them feel like, hey, that's what it will look like in my classroom. And it's so much harder to do that when you're just trying to get them to imagine it because you're using some kind of clip art or some screenshot that just doesn't really show it. So anyway, this episode wasn't supposed to be a big long rant about product photography and its importance. I actually want to get into the tips now. I'm hoping, though, that little spiel convinced you. Okay, so here are my tips for how to take a good photo of your TPT resource. First up, you need to have a good background. So I personally like using like a crisp, clear, clean, white piece of card, and I get it from like a stationery store. You can use a wooden backdrop. There are lots of other options, but it just needs to be nice and like clear and crisp. I think white is really good. When I first started doing product photography, I used this old yellow dining table. It was so gross. So make sure you've got a nice background. Next up, bird's eye view, like, directly from above in a really kind of even way. I used to take photos from like funny, weird angles, and that's just never good. So just like keep it really like, from above, but like even, and it's not like tilted at a funny angle or anything like that. Good lighting is another one. If it's like a dreary, rainy, miserable day, maybe just save product photography for another day. Sometimes it's not worth it and you cannot edit out those weird blue tinges and things. So try to wait for good lighting, good sunny day if you can. If that's really not an option, you might have to invest in like a photo box or something like that. But, in theory, a good sunny day is enough. And then that's like the basis, but you can actually edit after that. So I strongly recommend you can use your iPhone settings so that you can edit the brightness, the exposure, that kind of thing. But you can also use apps. And so here are 3 free apps for you: InShot, Snapseed, and a Color Story. I personally love InShot. It's really good for videos, but I actually use a Color Story for this really cool feature where you can like use your finger to kind of shade and make certain areas whiter and brighter if they've got like a shadow. It's so cool. So recommend getting those free apps. You don't have to pay or anything like that. And there's just some really good settings on there. And it's honestly not as complicated as it sounds. It's about making it as white and bright as possible. We don't want dingy, dark, or like yellowy photos. So if you can increase that brightness in some way without making the worksheet look washed out or whatever, see if you can do that. And then the other things I would say, editing is really, really key. So like that's a big thing, but you can also think about the background of your resource. So some props, but not too many, just maybe strategically scattering a couple of crayons or something, the things that are relevant, but not too busy and distracting. Just make it feel more real. I think it sometimes can feel a bit bland if you just put like a white worksheet on a white background. You know what I mean? So it's nice to kind of put a bit of pop of color with some stationery or something. But the other big thing is a colored piece of paper behind each white piece of paper. So if you've got a white worksheet on a white background, it just completely blurs together and it's impossible to see. So when you layer that on like a piece of like blue colored paper and you can just see like the edges of it around, it's really easy on the eye. And that was a tip that I got from one of my previous podcast guests. And I think it's a great tip. So I've done a lot of product photography over the years. I actually started in, I think it was 2019. And I think I started 1 month and the next month my sales really, really increased. And back then I was doing some really dodgy product photography. Like I'd have to show you, but it's hideous. But even though it was kind of bad, it was better than nothing. Like basically, if you've been thinking, product photography is good, but you're just not good at it, and that's why you've been talking yourself out of it, I can tell you now a bad product photo is still better than not having one. In consideration, like with what I've talked about earlier and the importance of photos. And then honestly, you will never become good at something if you don't do it over and over and over again in practice. And so the years I've spent, like the last 5 years of doing product photography, now I'm capable of taking a somewhat decent picture. I was not 5 years ago. So you have to practice. And if you're not willing to learn how to do it or do it yourself, that's totally okay. But then I would highly recommend hiring someone. And so, a product photographer has that skill set and they will create gorgeous photos, but it will be an investment. So you would need to have the money to do that. It's one of those things I think is worth investing in because it's something that you can use on your TPT listing, your thumbnails, your preview, whatever, on your own website, in your blog, on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. Like you could throw pictures anywhere on ads and stuff. So it's like, it's versatile. That one image can be used a lot, but maybe in terms of affordability, maybe you'd have to just do a few resources, start with your bestsellers, something like that, something you might get a return on. Or like I said, have a go at doing it yourself. Anyway, those are my tips. I will actually put a link in the show notes to the previous episode. I've only ever done one episode on product photography on this podcast, which is crazy because I'm really passionate about product photography and the importance of it. But weirdly, I've only ever done one episode. It was actually with a guest, Kelly Harville, and it was episode 22. So season 1, episode 22. It's way back at the beginning. But, feel free to listen to that if you want to learn a bit more. I think I honestly didn't record any others after that because I was like, how am I going to top that? She was awesome. She had some really great tips. But it's been a while, so I thought I would come back in and talk about product photography again. Just, nag you guys. But anyway, so those are my tips. Now, I'm going to actually dive into a couple of tips. So Paula Morales is someone that actually has done some product photography for me in the past. And she said she would share a few tips. So I'm actually going to read out a few of the things she said. So she's a product photographer for TPT sellers. And she's actually a person that said she would be happy to do a little giveaway. So that's what I'm going to be mentioning at the end of this episode. But here were her tips for product photos. She said, consider purchasing or building your own light box because this will help you maintain constant, good quality lighting. And so, I talked about earlier about finding a sunny day, but if you live in a place that does not have good sun like I do here in Australia, then maybe a light box is the way to go. And Amazon has a lot of these things, so definitely worth checking out. She also said use a background that won't distract from the product. So use colors and textures that contrast with your product so it stands out and not confused with the background, which is similar to what I said about the white on white. So, keeping your background in mind, it's not as simple as just, kind of grabbing your worksheets and throwing them on any surface. You'll be kind of mindful of what you're doing. Next up, she said use a phone holder, and I do agree with that. I actually often take photos just like by hand, but when I'm doing videos, I have to use a phone holder because otherwise it's really wobbly and unsteady. Phone holder can be really handy, especially if you're kind of trying to move things around and then you're not like, putting the phone down, lifting it up. It's just like having it set in place is perfect. And again, Amazon, another great place where you can get all these different types of phone holders. So you might just want to have a look on there for one that's in your price range and, read the reviews, obviously, but usually they're all pretty good, but you just want something that's obviously something you can afford. Next up, she said, make a list of all the props and materials you will use in your photos and have them close to you during the session. That's another great thing to do. And she said, find the best way to show how your product works and what its benefits are so that the photographs are as accurate as possible. I actually kind of feel remiss I didn't mention this because I talked all about like lighting and editing and stuff, but the actual way that you set up your product is important. I do agree with Paula on that one. So, you want to be not crowding the photo with too many pages or, obscuring things too much or like kind of angling them in a funny way. It's really great to have things be really clear and easy to see. And if you've got something that can be manipulated anyway, like where you're like flipping something open or cutting and pasting or coloring certain parts, like try to fill it in a certain way or move it in a certain way that makes it really obvious how it works and what it does. You want to kind of show it in its best light. I actually think it's really important to actually fill in or color in parts of it. That's what differentiates it from a mock-up, because mock-ups are often just the screenshot layered on top of the, professional photo. But when you do a real product photo, you actually get to like write down and color things in and pretend to be a student almost. That's what kind of separates product photography from mock-ups and I think makes it better in my opinion. So you're filling it out, it allows teachers to see what the worksheet or what the activity or the craft or whatever will actually look like when it's completed by a student. And it's not just about being salesy and going, oh, this is going to persuade you because it looks really good. It's like sometimes it helps teachers understand your resource because you've made the resource and you know exactly how it works and what it's supposed to look like and stuff, especially with crafts and things. But your buyer has no idea. They might be like, I don't even really understand what this is. But they can see the photo. They're like, oh, I see it's a flip book and it's going to lift that way and do that. Oh, yeah. And then it might kind of convince them to understand how it works. But especially, if it's got, really good benefits and features too. And you can show that. If you can find a way to show that it's got differentiation or digital options or answer keys, you can kind of show those features too. There's so many options. A lot of the time, though, I keep it simple and I just try to pick the best parts of the product, maybe like the nicest looking worksheet or the thing that I'm kind of most proud of, and I might just like show one or two things. I don't like go crazy photographing everything. You do not have to. So now I want to talk quickly about the giveaway that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So you will get 5 photographs of a single product that Paula will take for you. And it can be, any product that you want. I've seen not like a bundle, obviously, but just like a normal product. And up to 10 actual sheets, like pages, will be printed. So a maximum of 5 will be prepared. So she might actually like fill in and color things in. And I'm happy to, I think I shared on my stories the other week, but I can show you what her work looks like. But I will put a link in the show notes if you want to see her portfolio. So you can see what kind of photos she does, but she does really gorgeous photos and she's done some lovely ones for me. So I think she's a great person for this giveaway. So that is what you get if you win. And I think it's really nice to have someone do some product photos for you for free. Pretty cool. I would be jumping on that. So yeah, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to my Facebook group because that's actually where the giveaway is going to be. I've got a post I'm going to be putting up in the Facebook group. It's going to be like live in there. The week this episode is airing. So if you're listening to this as of June 2024, then it will be applicable to you. So just make sure you're in my Facebook group so you don't miss out on the giveaway. And I will obviously mention it on my Instagram as well to remind people they can do it. I might put a link there too. But I might put it in my stories, my Instagram stories. I'll put a reminder about the giveaway and stuff. But it's all going to be hosted in the Facebook group because that's the easiest way for people to just comment and for us to pick a winner and stuff. I find that really much easier. So yeah, join the Facebook group if you haven't already, the Terrific Teacherpreneur. But yeah, in summary, I basically, like I ranted earlier, product photography is a non-negotiable now. If you want to stand out, if you want to have quality listings and be a successful seller, essentially, you want to compete with the people in your niche, you probably are going to have to jump onto this bandwagon. I don't like forcing things on people and saying like, hey, all sellers should be on Pinterest. I mean, you've got to choose your own things, right? I say always choose a marketing platform that suits your personality. That's always been my thing. Like pick up what you want to do and what you have time for and what suits you. But there are some things, and whether it's like making previews or doing SEO, or in this case, I think product photography, when it comes to your listings that have just gotten to that point now where you want to be competitive, you have to do it. And it's not so much an option. Like if you want to have an email list, you can. If you don't want to have it, it's not the end of the world. Your business on TBT will still, do well if you don't have an email list. Those are very much bonus kind of choices, and it's totally up to you to get a little bit of extra income. But when it comes to actual TBT stuff, there are some things that are really going to make or break your income. And I think having quality listings, like having great products and listings is just, it all goes hand in hand. And the photography side of things is just, pretty important nowadays, unfortunately. I know that's hard to hear because product photography can be kind of tiring, a lot of effort. But sometimes we've got to do the hard thing because it's worth it. And if spending like 15, 20 minutes doing some product photography one afternoon, as awful as that might feel, if you hate product photography, if you knew that was going to bring you hundreds of dollars, wouldn't it be worth it? Yes. Okay. The previous episode I mentioned, episode 22, you can have a listen to that if you want to hear more about product photography with Kelly Harville. Definitely go through all those tips that I mentioned. But, be sure to really focus on good lighting, phone stands, and props and pops of color, and lots of editing and brightness and all that kind of stuff. All the tips I've given, I really hope you've listened to those and you try a few of those out. And be sure to join the Facebook group so you don't miss out on the giveaway. Whether or not you win, if you are looking to hire someone for product photography, definitely check out Paula. I will put a link in the show notes to her portfolio, like her website, so you can see what she has to offer. But she's been really great, especially with email communication and making changes and doing things to the way I liked it and stuff. She was really great to work with, so I do recommend her. So I will put a link in there for that. I will also throw some links in the show notes. I think I might put something together for the things we mentioned in this episode, because we mentioned phone holders and light boxes and things, those kind of product photography tools. And I will, after I finish recording this, I will go through my Facebook group, some of the old posts. I know people have spent years asking what do you recommend? And I will compile some of the links of the ones that people have used and recommended. Like here are a bunch of phone holders, here are a bunch of ring lights. Now, obviously these won't all be, vetted by me. So you will need to look through these listings from Amazon to check that they're what you're looking for, but they will be things that other sellers have tried. So I'll put that together and I hope that helps as well. Hopefully you can find some things that suit you. But anyway, I hope this episode has helped and I hope you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.